Good
This
afternoon,
meeting is
everybody.
being recorded.
Thank you. This meeting is being recorded. I hope I have your permission to do that. Thank you very much. Let's start. Good morning and good afternoon and welcome to our COS 1511 Group 1E Zoom session. I can see quite a number of people on the call out here. Abdul, Ntumaleng, Marianne, Zeta. Anybody would like to unmute and say hi, hello, where are you calling me from? Hello, hi. Quick intro. Hello, Marianne.
Yep. Hello, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well, thank you. Thank you for that recording as well. How are you, Marianne?
Fine, and yourself? I was gonna say it's raining here, so.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you for logging in a little bit early as well. We did chat along, but that wasn't the recording, but now it is. All right, great. Anybody else would like to say hi quickly? I know Zeta is here.
Morning.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thanks, and you, sir?
Excellent. Now that you've logged in, great. Okay, so today we're going to continue with what our strategy is. Like I said, to tackle and to pass COS 1511, you need to know your assignments, solutions in and out, because that's where the objectives for the course are embedded, right? Now let's look at assignment 2, and we're going to continue from last week where we left off as we spoke about assignment 2, question 4. Abdul was here. We had an open mic session, and now we're going to continue with assignment 2, question 5. And in question 5, I'd like to know, what are the objectives in this question? What is it that the examiner wanted to test you on? Because when we start with past year question papers, I'm going to refer to the assignment question, and I'm going to refer to the objectives in this assignment question, right? So talk to me. I know we had a quick discussion before this. Marianne, do you think that you're going to get something as complicated as this in the exam, question 5? What do you think, Marianne?
Yeah, so basically, yeah, they're testing you on functions and so on, but something that I had difficulty with, and which a lot of people I think might have had, is reading in characters when you're actually looking for an integer variable.
Okay, so yes, you are absolutely right. They are testing you on functions. And for those of you who missed my previous videos, fun with functions. Joke, Marianne. Fun, F-U-N, functions. Oh, you got to see the joke there. Okay, it doesn't matter. Right, so that's right. You're absolutely right. They're going to test you on functions. Okay. There's a reaction button out here somewhere where you can do some laughs as well. Are you allowed to do that? I know it's play champ, raised hand. Okay. No, I know it's in MS Teams, you can do that. So in the exam, by the way, we are now into a little bit of exam mode as well. In my 23 years of tutoring COS 1511, they did not have such a complicated question in the examination, right? I can take a past year paper and we can go through that. In fact, this question would have taken you a good couple hours. Marianne, how long did you take to answer this question, Marianne?
I really don't know the answer to that one, but quite a while.
It's quite a while, right? Quite a while. More than 2 hours, 3 hours?
I've no idea. I'll say it has also been quite a while ago since.
Okay. But if I look at this question and you are an examiner, do you think that it's a fair question to have in the exam, question 5?
I don't think it's a fair question to have anywhere at this point in time.
Oh, okay. It's being recorded, just note, and I'm not sure if the examiners listen to this recording as well. Okay, yeah, you got a point out there, right? It's not a fair question, because if you look at the test data, and again, I'm putting myself out there, and the examiner will also take note of it. If I look at the test data, it has numeric and it has alphabets in there. And you said yes, no, and they also have 12, 24, 23. So to me as an examiner, and if I had to provide some constructive criticism, is that we don't want to confuse a first-year student who's programming and he needs to determine whether there's an error message that needs to happen or he needs to catch, use a try-catch exception example. All right. So, well, I agree with you. Marianne, you mentioned something about functions. Yes, that's a very important part of the curriculum, and they will test you on that. Right. Now, I'm going to take a bet on this, Marianne and Abdul. I don't think that they're going to have a question like this in the exam. A question like question 5, where there's, separate. There's so many functions, and something that will take a student about an hour to complete. Because you must remember, Abdul, that get ready, Abdul. I'm going to ask you a question now. How long is your exam paper, Abdul, for COS 1511? Do you know? What's the duration?
I'm not sure. I'm thinking minimum 2 hours.
Okay, if you're not sure, would you like me to share an exam paper with you, Abdul?
Sure, you can, sir. I really appreciate that. Or is it 3 hours?
Let's do it now, right? Let's do it now, right? I've got a let's see if I can get a question paper, a past year paper, right? I've got a question part. Let's have a look at the past year paper, and there's past year examination papers, right? So, this is really old papers. There we go, October 2021, right? Let's look at October 2021. So, Abdul, I'm sharing my screen with you. Abdul, can you see that? I've got right, Abdul. How long, Abdul?
Yes, it's 2 hours.
2 hours, right? Now in 2 hours, and there's 75 marks. Okay, so in 2 hours, they are expecting you to answer other questions as well. So if I look at this exam paper, they've got some question 1. It's a short question. It's about 2 marks. Question 1.2. Hey, look at this. This looks familiar. Switch statement. And question 2, they've also 2 marks, 2 marks. Question 3 is 8-mark question. Question 4 is an 8-mark question. I'm looking at question 5 is a 5-mark question. Question 6 is 9 marks, and it's broken down into 2 marks, 3 marks, 2 marks. Question 7 is a 6-mark question, and again, it's on arrays. I'm looking at question 8, 8-mark question. So if I had to have a look at my past year papers, they have a scenario. This is a scenario-based question. Can you see bookworm bookstores announced a competition running for, and it's also 8 marks. They have part question, if I could call it 9.1, 9.2, 2 marks, 6-mark question. There isn't a question that is scenario-based where you have to answer it to the effect as an example from assignment 2, question 5. Do you see what I'm getting at, Abdul?
I'm seeing that, sir. So is it safe to then assume that we won't be probably writing any code per se? It's just that they would be testing us on the theory part of things and not getting to write the code per se.
Right. Abdul, I don't want to put my foot in it and state that it's not so, but you will receive code that you have to write. But you will not have a long scenario-based question like what happened last year, where they had about the airline reservations and the students had to determine ticket value and something like that, right? That I know is a kind of no-no. Again, in 23 years that I've been doing this, that never took place. Okay, Abdul?
I hear you, sir.
Right, so you hear me, and again, I don't see the exam paper, so I can't tell you that, listen, that's definitely not going to come out. But so far in all the number of years that I take my exam and my bets, and again, I'm not a gambling man, I haven't lost a bet as yet. Marianne, is that a cool bet to take, Marianne? I know Marianne will hold me to ransom if I make a claim like that.
Oh, certainly.
Great. Right, so Marianne, so here's my my bet. My bet is that they're not going to give you a scenario-based question for about 25 to 30 marks. That's going to take you about an hour to work on in terms of an examination question. Okay, Marianne?
Okay.
On record that I've taken a bet with Marianne, but they would give you a scenario-based question, like what happens out here, for about 7 or 8 marks, right? For about 7 or 8 marks. So let's look at this one. There's 8 marks, just 8 marks. But if I look at the way the question is, it's just got a declaration, it's got to write a fragment of code to display the marks, and that's it, right? It's not going to be as complicated as this. Write a function used for the judge's score. Write a function to calculate and display the average. Write a function to find the lowest and highest mark. Write a function to return the highest mark. Write a function to display the output. Do you understand where I'm getting at, Marianne and Abdul and the rest of you, in terms of the complexity of the examination question? Are you cool with that?
Yeah,
Cool.
it's
Right.
testing the concept, but it's not ingewikkeld per se. It's
Yes. I can take a bet with you right now. Average, total, highest, lowest must come out in the exam, must come out in 2024. That I can guarantee you, and I know I haven't seen the paper. Marianne, you want to take a bet with me that that's going to appear in the exam?
When you sound like an examiner already, I don't know, but you're giving me examiner vibes. I think you're the one setting it, but hey, I'll agree with you.
No, I don't set the paper. I don't see the paper, and I definitely don't want to see it because I may just blurt out some examination tips. Right? Okay, so let's go and answer this question now, right? So let's go and answer this question, and it's a good point to start from what they have given us. So they've given us using namespace, and they've told me double, score 1, score 2, score 3, score 4. I have the solution with me, and let's start it off, right? Create a new project. Console application, C++. In honor of Zita, who has joined us for today. Zita, how's that, Zita? Is that cool?
Yeah, sir.
You like it? Okay, right. In honor of what Zita has done, here we go. Got it. And let's go to View. Let's go to Manager so that I can see Zita. So you'll also realize that we're not starting brand new. We're starting with the program that they've given us. And because time is of the essence out here, and I'm going to do my copy and pasting, right? So I'm going to copy it. I'm going to say copy it, and I'm going to paste it into my code blocks. I don't need all of that. Control V. It's important that I'm mentioning this to you because you can't see my screen. And let's go back to get score. There we go. It says call function. And that's just a, right, Control C, let's go there, Control V, that was just a comment statement. Let's go back. Abdul, aren't I a fast typist, Abdul?
One of the greatest typers we have, so one of the fastest we have in SA.
Thank you. 20 lines in a matter of a few seconds, right? So this is what they've given us. Now this is what will happen in the examination as well. If they give you code, you need to go and identify what's going on in that code. So if I take my examination paper, let's look at there's October exam paper. So they've given us code. They've given us code in question number 9. Go and have a look at that code and talk to yourself in terms of what is it that you need to interpret so that you can answer the question. Even if it means, okay, you can't talk out loud now. I don't know whether they're going to still allow, off-campus remote examination, or if you're going to be in an exam hall. But like this in question 9.2, you're going to say const int num weeks equals 4, const int name equals 3. Okay, so I've got that. So it kind of positions you when you are answering the question. Hey, int highest. Oh, wow, I've got that. I've got to think about that. Assume the statements, da, 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 da. So the same thing will happen with this question. So I'm going to look at this question and say double, score 1, score 2. I know, Abdul, what are you thinking about this double over here? Abdul? Well,
they're declared, however, they're not initiated. So.
Okay. Oh, good. Okay, they haven't initialized it, right? But listen, for the and you could, if you want to initialize it, but for the terms of an exam, don't go and question the question as such, right? Because by the time it reaches the examination, it would have went through a moderator, and they would have decided, hey, I don't need to initialize it, right? So if I have to talk to myself and say, listen here, question line number 5, they're declaring my variable. I've got to have 5 scores. And what also will help you is the test data that we see, right? Let's look at the test data. The test data also tells me that, oh, there's 5 scores, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, so I've got to enter in the score. Abdul, so far so good. Abdul, we're looking at it. I haven't read the entire question. I just went through the question and I've taken what they have. All right, and I've copied it and I've typed it in. Let's see that. In line number 9, we have a function called get judge data score 1. In line number 10, get judge data score 2. In line number 11, get judge data score 3. In line number 12, and so forth. Now, because I'm a little more experienced in programming than you are, I'm going to look at this and say, hey, why are they calling score 1, score 2, score 3, score 4, score 5, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, right? That seems like a little tedious to do. Don't you think, Abdul?
Yes, it could be, sir.
Yeah. So they've written out the program and said, listen, I'm calling it up, because they could have simply had one function call and think about it, Abdul.
Have all the, yes, I think we could have one get judge data, and we could pass in all the arguments that we need from score 1 till score 5 using one function.
Great. Now this is what I'm talking about, an open mic session. You and I are going to talk about it, Abdul. So if I had to consider your strategy that you're talking about, Abdul, what programming structure will I require to ensure that I'm calling the function 5 times? A loop. Great. What kind of loop? We've got about 2 or 3 loops that we know of.
For loop.
Well, it could be, okay, I'd say generally it would be more easier to use a for loop, but you could use any loop as long as you know how to code it to work. But I'd say let's go for loop.
I see. I also heard Marian. I think Marian, was that you, Marian?
Yeah, jumping the gun as usual.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you. You helped Abdul. Abdul doesn't know that I'm on a time budget over here, right? So he's going to give us a long explanation. He will want to use the while loop, which you can use as well, Abdul, but you need to have a little more programming statements out there. So just out of quick revision for Zita, who joined us, and for Intimaleng and all of them, the for loop is used where we know for a fact and definitely that we have 5 times. We're going to call the function 5 times. You know, there's no 2 ways about it, unconditional, right? So that's what I could have done. But the way they structured the question, this is what they want and this is what they expect of us, right? So we need to go and call the function get judge data 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and we are only changing the parameter score 1, score 2, score 3, score 4, score 5, right? This is the actual parameter that we're passing across. Okay, Abdul? Quick revision again on functions. Now, the other day I was in training on Power. I'm not sure if you heard of Microsoft Power BI, business intelligence, all those things. And they were talking about passing across parameters. And the instructor had asked me about a value parameter versus a reference parameter. I thought to myself, wow, here's my programming experience and my skill in programming that's coming out in another task. And I said, I must share this with you. So all that you are learning in terms of C++, the concepts of parameter passing, functions, value parameter, what happens in the function gets passed across in the main program, that will help you when you are in another environment. Obviously, it will relate to programming. Okay, so that's what happens out there. Then I look at line number 15. It says call the function to calculate the contestant's final score. And in line number 16, it's got final score is equal to calc the score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Abdul, talk to me, Abdul. How do you interpret it? What is the narrative that you're going to come across in line number 16? Make this a story sum.
In line number 16, what I'm thinking, if let's say we were to see out that it would give us the output in that format that we saw in that table. So it would give us the score of contestant number 1 or score 1, score 2. So all this information would be, let's say, outputted by this one function instead of us doing it individually as calling it with getting judge data and all that. That's what I think.
Okay, I like that. I like that. Right, but I'm a dad, and I used to tell my kids stories, right? So let's make this a story sum. So I'm going to say something like, once upon a time, there was a function called calscore. Calscore had 5 variables: score 1, score 2, score 3, score 4, score 5. All these variables were declared to be double. They were passed across, and the answer that they got was stored in final score. The end.
You can't end with the end. If you start with once upon a time, you have to end with happily ever after. Do you not know anything?
Okay. Then calc score and all the variables and the answer lived happily ever after. Okay. Right. So that's my story sum, and that will help you interpret what the programmer or the examiner requested from you. So if I had to use the same analogy to look at the exam, let's say exam question. So if I had to look at this exam question, I'm going to say, once upon a time, there was a question 9 in October of 2021, and they had 4 or 2 variables, and both the variables were constant variables, and they had an array called, what was the array called? Oh, they haven't called the array as yet, right? So this manner of speaking will kind of help you to understand the question, because very often in programming, you don't get to understand what the user requirements are, right? And this I'm talking from, a system development perspective. You don't get the story sum from the user. And that's what I'm trying to inculcate in you. I want you to be able to give it to me or the examiner when you're writing your answers out in a format that's easy and simple to understand and to basically give it write it out, right? Because that's what they're testing you on in the exam. Your ability to write code or to understand the program and to give out an answer. Now this becomes very important when I'm looking at the switch statement out here. So if I look at the switch statement, and I'm going to make a story sum out of that. So where's my switch statement? Somewhere out here I saw it. Right? There's my switch statement. Right? Here's my switch statement. It says, suppose the input value for A is 5. If you can make it into a story sum, you'll get to understand that this break statement is very, very important. Abdul, this looks familiar, doesn't it? Doesn't this familiar? Yeah, right? So when you are answering the exam question, think about this little story sum that I had, right? So when my kids were small, if I had to tell them the story of Goldilocks and the 3 bears, I would have said, once upon a time, there were 3 bears, mother bear, father bear, and baby bear. If I have to talk to you guys as, 18, 19-year-olds, I'm going to say, once upon a time, there was question 1.2 with the variable int A. We read in the value of int A took on the value of 5. Thereafter, I needed to go and do a computation on A depending on the case that I needed to select. Hello, aren't you liking the Goldilocks story?
I'm liking your approach, sir, because it's actually making some form of sense, and it helps with how I think I could start writing my code as well.
Good. So you know the story about Goldilocks. She entered the home, just barged in and went and tasted the first porridge. So she went to case number 1, and she tasted the first porridge. It was too hot. Yeah, right? So case 1 did not apply. She went to the second bowl of porridge. It was too cold. Don't you know the story of Goldilocks?
We do, sir.
Okay.
Well, I do. I'm not sure about our other colleagues.
Yeah, Zita, do you know the story of Goldilocks?
Yes, sir.
Oh, good, good, good. Okay, in this case, Goldilocks had the value of A is 5, and she had to go through each case to look through it, right? So, Marianne, you know the story of Goldilocks as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, good, good, good. By the way, the Goldilocks theory also works in astrophysics as well. You know that the Earth is it's a good distance away from the sun, so that life could take place. You know, it's not too far, too cold or too hot. It was just right. Okay. Besides, that's out of the way. So here's my question. Let's go back. So I'm so happy that Abdul was able to narrate the story for line number 16, and that explained to him and to me that he has an understanding of one, functions, which Marianne, you would agree that in this question they are testing you on functions, and they are also testing you, yeah, and they're also testing you or they're examining you on parameter passing in this question. That they were score 1, score 2, score 3, score 4, score 5, right? It's not the best solution because, like Abdul and I were talking about it, we could have written this in terms of a loop, calling the function just once and running the loop 5 times. And then finally, they have display output. So one of my strategies in teaching you programming was this: any program has 3 basic concepts. Marianne, Abdul, Zita, and Tumaleng, anyone can talk to me about those 3 strategies or those 3 aspects of the program that I spoke to you about a couple of weeks ago, and how it applies to this program.
Input, processing, and output.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you. Abdul?
I agree with Miriam.
Great, great. Zita, did I talk to you about that input, processing, and output strategy?
Yes, sir.
Great, great. So again, in my story sums thingy, I'm going to say, once upon a time, there was a question 5 in assignment 2, and that question 5 had to have 3 components: input, processing, and output. In input, I need to find out what is it that goes into the question, into the program. Under processing, we needed to find out what computation takes place. What is it that I need to do with my input values? And already Marianne said that, listen here, there's a problem with the input. Marianne, if you could just go through that problem again that you spoke about before we started the recording. What was the issue over here with this input?
Yeah, so the characters. So the thing is, you're inputting, okay, well, not integers, floats. You're inputting floats and or doubles, since Abdul is partial to them, doubles. But then they give you characters in your sample data. Yeah, they give you characters in your sample data. So I was having trouble introducing a step where it tested, okay, this variable that you're entering as a double is suddenly a char. How do you filter this out? And this was invariably crashing my program.
Ooh, so your program crashed. So you entered in 12, 4, 15, 8, 59, and then when you entered in Y, it crashed. Any idea what happened, Marianne? Or Abdul, you wanna? Zita?
I don't know, did we get to declare the characters as well?
I don't know. Marianne, did you declare?
Yeah, but Abdul, you're trying to put a character into a double variable. It's not working, so lacquer.
So we
So
had
because I actually had like 3 different test sets, because it more says to you that you need to have 5 different things of data. So I was entering the things in line by line. So the first line, the second line, then we get to the third line that has all those letters. And you put in the first Y, it spits out the rest of your C out statements and just ends the program.
Okay, so here we go. We're talking. Thank you for that, Marianne. I know we had a discussion beforehand. Everybody wasn't on board at that time, but Marianne had declared her scores to be float. You can't go along in the middle of the program and now decide, hey, I have 12, 24, 23 being entered in, and now I want to decide and I'm going to enter in Y, and N, right? That's just not the way C++ operates. We can't go and change the type declaration. Okay, so Abdul, if it was something like you said, I'm going to go for double, 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 you can't go for single after having doubles all the time. Joke, Abdul. Oh man. Oh, okay. Nobody else knows about that joke between you and I about double. Okay, thank you. Right. So that was the issue out there. And if you notice, the way it has been declared, it says double, score 1, score 2, score 3, score 4. And that's what gave me an idea that how can you have a score of y, 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 n? So I can confidently say that there's some issue with this test data versus the program declaration. Cool with that, Marianne? You need to rationalize and to be able to speak or to argue, if I could call it, argue, not argue as in argument, fighting argument and all that, but argue your point across that the scores were all declared to be double, and here, Marianne, you are declaring it to be character. Cool with that, Marianne? So that was the reason why I felt that you should not have had that. So let's go on and look at what was some of the way we looked, where the answer came up. So here it is. I've got getting the judges' data. Oh, another important point that they were testing you on in this question. They were testing you on validation. Have a look at it. It says, do not accept scores lower than 0 or higher than 10. In this question, and validation is pretty important as well, Marianne and Abdul and Zita and Tumale. Validation appears in some form or the other in terms of a while loop. If you want values between 0 and 10, or you don't want values that are only positive, or you want values that are non-negative for that matter, I'm just saying it in another way, then they are talking about validating scores, right? Validating scores. Marianne, you're supposed to keep an eye on the chat, and what's the answers again there? What's the questions? My internet connection is oh, okay, nothing too serious. Oh, double again, right? Good, right. So we got the gist. Right. So Marianne,
there wasn't really anything that needed answers.
Oh, okay, but feel free, Marianne, to stop me if there's a problem in the exchange. So we've determined.
Yeah, I have been watching. But...
Oh, thank you, Marianne. Right. So in this question, they are testing you on functions, they're testing you on parameter passing, and they are also testing you on validation. See this one here, it says validation. Do not accept scores lower than 0 or higher than 10. Right. Now that also was a little bit confusing to me because, or not confusing, that gave me an idea that they wanted scores that are numeric, and if someone had to enter in something higher, then it was going to exclude that. And that was another query that students had. So if I looked at the test data at 12, 24, 23, 4, 15, which score would it have taken from the first row, Marianne?
Oh, sorry, just a sec, let me enlarge the thing.
Okay.
Oh gosh, now it's gone off the bottom of the page. There we go.
Right.
12, 24, 23. So it would have been 4, it's the second one from the back.
Yeah, right? Because the other data would have been ignored, right? They tell me that the judges score, it has to be between 0 and say 11. Oh, these are other important words to note. Between and from. From means that you are including 0 and you are including 10. So if I say enter in a score from 0 to 10, then I'm including 0 and I'm including 10. But if they have to say enter in a score between 0 and 10, then they want a score of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Take note of the subtle differences and the way a question could be written. Okay? Abdul, what do you think about those words, between and from? Abdul?
I think they are just self-explanatory in a sense that if you say between, so it is within a certain range, and then there are maybe factors that are excluded within that range, And then if you're going to say from, it definitely shows that you are including everything.
Okay, great. So that's the reasoning behind this function, right? So let's go and run this function. Let's go and include this function. Put that function out here, and that's what happens out there. So in this example, they want me to look for a score. Again, I'm taking it from get data score 1. Here's my get data here. They asked me to input a score. Now, I'm going to skip the step where I did this with you guys, where you're looking at, let's say, for instance, I'm sure you'll be able to answer that. Please provide a score. Invalid score, please provide a score. You're going to ask that. That you could have taken from a previous recording of mine, right? Where I spoke about the strategy to tackle a programming example would be, what is it that you want? Remember I told you input, processing, output? And under input, you're going to say, please enter in a value, right? Whether it is. So in line number 9, here's my story sum again. In line number 9, I am requesting the user or the program to validate the user's score. That means the score must be from 0 to 10. If it's not in that range, I want to display a message that says invalid score. Now, Abdul, talk to me about your interpretation of line number 9 in terms of if you had to explain this to a 5-year-old or a preschooler as a story sum. How would you talk to me and how would you tell them that story?
Okay, I want to say once upon a time in this particular function called get judge data,
Yeah.
there was a condition which was called maybe the while. There was a loop called the while loop, and within that loop, it had a condition, and this condition stated that if a number is it less, if a number is if a number is greater than 0, or if the number is less than 10, then there should be something that needs to be done if either of those conditions were to be met. And if a number is greater than 10, then you would say something like it's an invalid score, it doesn't fall within our range. But if the number is to be within the range that we would want to return that number or that score or whatever that number would be.
Okay.
That would be my main story.
Right, lovely story, lovely story. Marianne, you should have ended with the lived.
Yes, doesn't say.
And the while loop, I would say it happily enjoyed checking if the condition was true and doing its job as the loop.
Okay.
End.
Lovely. So they lived all the scores lived happily ever after. So what you are trying to tell me out here, Abdul, is that you had to think in terms of being incorrectly entered into the program, right? The input was incorrect. So you as a programmer need to cater for the user that wants to catch you out and say, hey, what's happening out here, right? So that's part of the reason or the rationale of being, I call this defensive programming. Okay, there's another journal article that I can talk about, right? Defensive programming. So you are ensuring that the person is entering in the correct value under input. So again, I told you there's 3 possibilities, not possible strategies, input, processing, output, that's what I have. And under input, we must ensure that the person enters in indeed the correct type, the data type, that it is numeric. And also now we're going to say that the data type must be within a particular range, because that's what they are testing you out here, right? They are telling you quite the nice word, whatever, right? They're telling you that it must be from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 until 10, right? Do not accept anything. They are saying, do not accept. This was a nice one. Do not accept it. So let's go and have a look and see what happens with this program. All right. So here it is. Let's compile this thing. Let's see if it compiles. There's a problem. The final score. Okay, I'm not going to call a final score. Let's compile it again. Display score. No, I'm not going to do that. Right. So right? I did this with you guys where in terms of writing code, you make them comment statements so that I can test small aspects of it, right? So let's go and run the code. Right? So it says, please provide me with a score, right? Abdul, I know you are in Pretoria and I'm in Durban, but Abdul, I want you to start thinking and to think what I'm going to ask you to enter in. Abdul, I think you know the way I teach now, Abdul. So what score will I request from you, Abdul?
Is it, you still want a number that could possibly be between 3 and 5?
No. I'm okay. We skip that joke now. Abdul, there's a question there, Abdul. What score? Give me a score. Okay. Let's play our game. I want a number, Abdul. I want all of you to think about a number between 11 and 13. And before Marianne says anything, Marianne, it must be an integer. Abdul, what number are you thinking of?
12. I'm thinking of 12.
12. Okay, 12. So I'm thinking of 12. And Abdul, that's the test data, right? So I'm entering in 12 out here, right? So it says 12, and I'm saying, oh boy, invalid score. Please re-enter a score. So Abdul, I want you to give me another test data.
Okay, can you try 4?
No. Abdul, why you not go for 4? Let's go with what the test data they've given us. Think of another number, Abdul.
Okay,
Say between
24
and 25. Okay, 24, right?
24.
Abdul, think of another number between 22 and 24.
23.
23. My point I'm getting across is, can you see the checks on the data that it's not accepting? I'm not saying it's accepting, I'm saying it's not accepting, because that's what the question is. And why I'm harping on this point is, in the exam, they may come a question regarding data validation. This is what we talk in terms of programming, right? Now, Abdul, let's give the correct value, right? 4, right? So now it's going to accept it, right? Like Marianne said, quite correctly, the only value that it was going to accept was 4. 15, it's not going to accept it, right? No, it's not going to accept it, right? 12, it's not going to accept it. 4, it's going to accept it. 15, it's not going to accept it. 8, yes, it will accept it, right? 15, 9, it's not going to accept it, right? Okay. Are you happy with that part of the explanation to the program, right? I'm just going to stop there now. So let's go back to the question and let's go back to what they asked of you. So this line number 7 and 8 is simple. It's simple because we've been doing that from the very first lesson. Hello, my name is. Remember that many months ago, Abdul, Marianne?
Yes. Oh.
Zita, I know I did that with you once. We had a lesson where I simply wanted. The new thing out here is this while loop, right? Quickly, let's do some revision on the while loop story. The while loop. Abdul, can you give me some conditions as to when and how the while loop and what we need for the while loop to work?
So it needs a condition.
Yeah.
It needs to check if the condition is true.
Yeah.
And if the condition is true, then it will execute.
Right.
But if the condition is not true, then it will not run.
Right. Okay. So, and I also call this a read ahead, right? So in line number 8 and 9, it's called a read ahead. We have to have something to compare with. Quick revision of the while loop. You must have something to compare. So you look at line number 9, Abdul. Can you see I've entered the value of score check. So now in line number 11, yes, I can determine what happens in score check. And also inside the loop, it must come out to be true so that I can come out of the loop. Okay. You cool with that, Abdul? Marianne? Those 3 conditions of the while loop? Intumaleng? I didn't hear you talk, Intumaleng. I didn't hear your voice. Intumaleng. Oh yeah, Intumaleng, I typed in something about the chat. There was some issues about the internet. Zita, are you cool with those, the conditions or the characteristics of the while loop?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool, right? So that's fine. Now, we also did this last week where we had a return score is equal to score check. And if you listen to my YouTube video, some people were saying, I need, or last week we were talking about returning two values. Generally, the definition of a function is that it calculates something and that's all it does, just one answer. Because you must remember, in the main program where I'm calling it up and it's going to give me one value. I'm not gonna, that's how a function works, right, from mathematics. So that's why I can only return one thing out here. And that's how we should do things one at a time. Don't go and do 2 or 3 values and answers that's coming out. All right, cool with that? Let's go back to the question. So the question, it said, now write a function to calculate and display the average of the 3 scores that remain after dropping the highest and the lowest scores. The function should be called just once by the main program and should be past the 5 scores. The 2 functions described below should be called by this function, namely a function to find the lowest score and a function that returns the highest score and displays the output. So this is what happens. What Abdul was talking about is story sum. In line number 32, which moved a little bit, it was line number 17 before. I'm calling a function calc score. I'm passing across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scores. Those 5 scores, there's some computation taking place on it, and I'm getting it from final score, right? Here's the solution. So let's look at it. So here's my solution. I'm going to look at my strategy, how I'm going to get my score, right? So it's going to say calculate final score. Let's copy that. And I'm going to come here. Right, so there we go. And I'll explain that to you. All right, so we'll talk about the strategy of how you find the lowest score or the highest score, right? I'm copying that. Control V.
So is it safe, sir, to say that the job or the function of this function or the purpose of this function was to compare that within those arguments that were inputted, which is the highest of them all, and then display that?
Correct. They wanted the highest score, the lowest score, and they wanted you, they complicated it a little bit where they wanted you to drop the score and to include the average thereafter, right? Okay. So let's just see if it's okay here. All right. So so far so good. Do I have any issues here? Right. Right. Okay. So let's talk now. So the question goes like this, right? The question said, right, so the question said, what do they need to find out? They need to find the average of the 3 scores after dropping the highest and lowest scores. The function should be called just once by the main and should be past the 4 or 5 scores. Now we know that the scores are 4, 4, and 8. And they say they need to drop the highest score, lowest score, and get the answer that's coming out thereafter. Right. So let's see the strategy, Abdul. That's what I wanted to. This question may not appear like this, but what I can tell you may appear is the average or the sum or running sum, or right. So in this example, in line number 59, as Abdul gave a story sum, I'm calling it up calc score, score 1, score 2, score 3, score 4, score 5. If I look at line number 19, I've got float calc score. This means that whatever comes out of the function is going to be a float value type. Okay. Score 1, score 2, score 3, score 4, score 5. Those are my formal parameters, right? Here's my actual parameters down here. Score 1, score 2, score 3, score 4, score 5. Here's my formal score 1, score 2, score 3, score 5. Now, last week, if you listen to my recording, I mentioned some factors that the actual parameters and the formal parameters have to abide by, right? Talk to me, Abdul, talk to me, Marianne, talk to me in Tumaleng. I know you were there last week. What are some of the characteristics associated with passing of parameters in line number 59? Abdul?
Okay, let me see, sir. I think if I still remember well, was there supposed to be a 1:1 ratio or relation between the two?
Yeah, that's right. 1:1 correspondence. Let's use the word correspondence. So if score 1 is here, then I must have score 1 out there, and it must be a 1:1 correspondence. Correct. Score 2 is here. That means I must have a correspondence out here. So basically, it must be in the same order, right?
Order, yes.
Score
Yes.
3, score 3. Score 4, score 4. So that's one characteristic, right? Hopefully, I feel a bit okay now that I'm telling you something new that, or consolidating what I spoke about last week. What else, Abdul? Intumaleng, Zeta, Marianne? Just by looking at line number 59 and by looking at line number 19.
There is the calling by reference, so it's that end percent that we were using, sir.
Yes. That's another one. Call by reference or call by value. Right now it's calling by value. Okay. All right. Okay. Good point there. Good point. And another obvious one, Abdul, based on what you said in the first story about the correspondence.
Yes, sir.
In line number 59, how many parameters are there? 1. Once upon a time, there were how many?
5.
5. Once upon a time, in line number 19, how many?
5.
Right. Okay, Goldilocks had how many bowls of porridge to taste? Abdul!
So you're breaking. I'm not sure if I'm hearing you correctly, or is it me, or what's going on?
Oh, sorry. Okay, Marianne, how many bowls of porridge did Goldilocks have to taste?
5.
No! Goldilocks said how many bowls of porridge? 3, Marianne.
But there are 5 variables in this particular story.
Oh yeah, okay. But okay. Oh man, now you're confusing me between Goldilocks and the 3 bears and the calc score and the 5 variables. Okay. Joke. I know I'm not a comedian, but I'd like to make you all happy and smile and laugh. So, Abdul, the number 1 characteristic must be the same. It must be the same number. Okay.
Yes.
If there are 5 scores out here in the main program, you need to have 5 out here. All right. It must be the same type. Both must be float. And they must also have either, like you said, a reference parameter or a value parameter. Right. Now,
Yes.
this is the method in order to determine the lowest score or the highest score. Right. The strategy. That's what I'm talking about. Because you'll also need to use it when you talk about arrays. Now, as a teacher, I'm simply putting in the cognitive hook or a cognitive structure to point out to you, listen here, you got to keep this in mind that you have another data structure called an array. In an array, you have all the variables are the same. There's score 1, score 2, score 3, score 4. But the difference is how we access each variable. We access it. Anybody knows? Anyone knows? Wants to give me the answer?
Through indexing, I think, sir.
Through an index or through what we call a subscript, right? And that'll help you in when you talk about structs as well. So what happens here in line number 22 is we assign a variable called lowest to one of our scores, right? In my case, we just took it as score 5, and we keep on comparing that. We keep on comparing it. So we say, if the score, the fifth score that we had was 4 or 5, and we now was compared, we passed it across to lowest, and as Abdul, you correctly pointed out, we should have initialized it to 0. It would have swapped it around, right? It would have swapped the value, and then it ultimately bubbles up to the top as being the lowest score or the highest score, right? Abdul, you with me, Abdul? Right? It comes to the top and says, listen here, this is the value that I have, the lowest score. Now to do the highest score, it's simply the other way around, right? You take the value and you swap it around and you go and do it. So I'm going to, when you are watching this video again, you can pause it, stop it, and you can see that it works in terms of running the highest and lowest. This is an algorithm for determining the highest score or the lowest score, right? In programming, you make sure that the number comes up all the way to the top, right? Now, once you determine the highest score, this is what they expect of you in the question. In the question, they state that I have to get the highest or the lowest value, remove that, and find the average thereafter, right? They say the two functions described should be called by this function to determine which of the scores to drop. You need to ensure that you have the average of the values after dropping the highest and the lowest score. So basically, when I talk dropping in mathematical terms, I must remove it from the equation or the my total. That's what it is. And interpreting that in programming means I subtract it, right? Subtract the highest and the lowest score. The formula to calculate average, Abdul, Marianne, Ntumaleng?
You'd add all those variables. So let's say, for example, you have 7 variables. You'd add those 7 variables and divide it by 7 because there's 7 of them.
Right, right. Is there 7 over here?
Well, in this particular case, we have 5.
Right.
So we'd add all 5 and divide by 5 as well. Whatever we get from that addition, divided by 5, and that could also be your average.
Right. But Abdul, do we have 5 variables out here?
You're talking in relation to what line, sir? Because I was just saying it in a more general sense.
Line number 43. I'm looking at line number 43.
Line number 43. Okay, you have 7 of them.
Okay, there's 7 of them.
If you're gonna include highest and lowest, because those are variables on their own.
Okay.
So from score 1 till score 5, those are 5 plus highest and lowest, that's 7. So you divide by 7. That's what I would think,
okay.
sir.
Okay. So thank you for that, Abdul. That was also another bone of contention with the students. They wanted to know what is it that they requested? But if I look at it out here, it says a function to calculate just with the average of the 3 scores. Abdul?
Average of 3 scores.
Yeah.
So if it's average of 3 scores, you'll divide by 3 then.
Right. That's what I was getting at. Okay. That's what I was getting at. And ultimately, they had to ask you to display the function or the value, right? The value there. And I think they actually said display output final score, right? So that was there. Now, Abdul, I just want to answer your question. You spoke about value parameters and reference parameters. If you'll notice, there's no reference parameters in this solution because, number one, we were returning the answers out here, right? Return score in line number 16. So that was passed across into the main program, return, and was passed across into display. Ntumeleng, go ahead with your question, Ntumeleng. Ntumeleng. Hi, Ntumeleng. Go ahead, Ntumeleng. I can't hear you. Or you want to type it in the chat, Ntumeleng? I learned a valuable lesson to avoid headache, heartache, panic, stress, cardiac arrest, and stress. The example data must be used for data validation. Oh, thank you, Ntumeleng. Thank you for that. She learned a valuable lesson about, yeah, you got to, okay, thank you, Ntumeleng. Cool. So, Abdul, you cool with it so far? Miriam, you okay with what's going on with the narrative of this question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I'll say Abdul's explanation of averages was something that made me like huckle there for a moment, made me pause and think about this. But again, it's like, okay, I'm back on track again.
Okay, cool.
Because I was like looking at this and going, but why are we adding the highest and lowest variables as part of the average? You know, that doesn't look very good to me. But yeah, okay, no, I'm happy again.
Happy again. All right, cool. So I'm not sure if this thing will work or not, but let's run the program. Let's run the program and see what happens, right, with our test data. Now I'm going to ignore this yes and no story, right? I know it's in the test data, but I'm going to ignore that because, listen, I don't know how it was phrased, and for now, let's run it, right? Display output. Oops, I didn't do display output. So let me just include that. Display output. Display output is simply displaying the score. Control C, and I'm going to include that here. Right. So again, this program works in terms of it having input processing output, and seems to be working. Right, 0 errors. Let's run the program. Please enter in a score. So when I'm running this program, I need to run it with my test data that they've given me. Right, Abdul?
Sorry, Dr. G.
Yes.
There is a question there on the chat.
Oh, okay, go
Somebody
ahead.
else, Abdul's confused.
Go ahead. Read out the question, please, Miriam.
Okay, so okay, I'm not going to read the thing, it'll take me forever, but the gist of the question is the three things that we are adding together and finding the average of are these highest and lowest. So the answer to that is no. You have 5 scores. We are discarding the highest and the lowest score, and we are taking the average of your middle 3.
Right? Yeah, great. Thank you for that, Miriam. Yeah, Ntumeleng, that was your question. It's the way the question was phrased. Remember, I spoke to you about getting the user requirements. That's what was lacking in this question, kind of, where we weren't sure whether it was just numeric or alphabet, or they wanted yes, no. That was one. And the other way it was, how do we interpret what they requested from us as an output? And Marianne quite correctly pointed out, and it's the way I interpreted it as well, was that you have scores, and they are telling you that ultimately you're going to get 3 scores coming in, which is 4, 5, or whatever it is, right, within that range. So there were too many constraints, if I could put it to you in that way, Ntumeleng, right? But we tried to give a solution or an answer as best as we can in terms of the time that we had and all that goes with it. I haven't received a solution to this question, so I don't know if this is indeed the right way of answering it or not. Marianne, have you received a solution to this question?
As far as I know, sir, none of these things have actually been marked yet. We're also waiting with bated breath.
Ooh, okay. If you were following the WhatsApp chat, someone mentioned that there's thousands of unmarked assignments. But anyway, leave that as.
There was a newspaper article on it a while ago. I'm afraid some of the maths things are taking a little while, but shame. I think the guys are all overworked, so.
Yeah, overworked and underpaid. Okay, so let's go with our, Abdul, you want to call out test data?
Okay, yes, 12,
Yeah.
24,
Yep.
23,
Yep.
4,
Yep.
and 15.
Right, and 12 and 4 and 15 and 8 and 59, right? And we're going to go on like this. Now, I'm going to leave it at this point. It's already 2 o'clock. It's past 2. We've done the first part of it. We have the section that works in terms of the output. I'm going to continue with this next week. So at least I get you all to come to see me for a Zoom lesson. And you can play around with this question in the way we've narrated the story. If you find a problem with value parameters, reference parameters, the characteristics associated with the while loop, try it out on your own. And next week after you're playing around with it for a week or so, you can we'll talk about it in full. Is that a good point to stop at, Marianne in Tumaling and Zita? How's that, Mayor?
Yeah, I think that's a good place. It's natural.
Yes.
Okay, so you're going to play around with it. Like I said, it's not the best solution or a solution at that. I want you all to try it out. Okay. So
I think I'm gonna fulfill this question again.
right. So Marianne, would you mind stopping or give us your announcement, and I will stop the recording, Marianne.
This recording has been completed.